right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the Carver Board of Selectmen meeting, January 14, 2014. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for taking the time to welcome Mr. Milanowski and his family to our wonderful town. I'm very optimistic and looking forward to his next 5 years on board here. Rod can't hear me. Can you hear me now, Rod? Yes. Okay, all right. See that? I dim the lights. I speak too loud, the lights dim. All right, a little bit of housekeeping. There are openings on the following committees: Audit Committee, Bike Path Committee, Business Development Commission, Carver Cultural Council, Carver Housing Authority, a state representative, Commission on Disability, Earth Removal Committee, Growers Representative, Finance Committee, Local Housing Partnership Committee, Marcus Atwood Trustees, Old Colony Regional Voc Tech School Committee, and Town Building Committee. Please contact the Selectmen's office for an application. Also, we're continuing to beat the drum for donations to the food pantry. If you would, please, there's still people out there struggling, not only with their food, but with their heating. And because of that sequestration and a number of other things, a lot of relief that would ordinarily be provided for these folks was not available. So there are a lot of people still struggling out there. So I thank you for your generosity in the past, and would ask you to continue to do the same things. Take care of our own here in town. The police department has recently installed a secure prescription medication disposal box in the lobby. This box will allow citizens to dispose of unused, unwanted, or expired prescription medications in a safe and secure manner. Medications can be dropped off at any time. Please do not put any needles or liquid medications in this box. Speak to the dispatcher there. We have other means for disposal. So, again, thank you for paying attention to this, please. Once again, we want to welcome our new town administrator, Mr. Mike Milanowski. After he finishes the meeting here, he's going out sanding with Dick on the Bogs, and that's why he's dressed appropriately. So, he's really jumped into this with both feet. So.
It's an educational experience.
Okay.
No pay.
No pay. Well, that'll keep you both on an even plane there, huh, Dick? Okay, first up is request for common victualler license, Tan's Gourmet. And the representative from Tan's, come on up, sir, and have a seat. Please speak into the microphone, identify who you are and why you're here.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Choi. I'm representative of Tan's Gourmet Restaurant.
Everybody knows where Tan's is? It's next to the cleanest spot over here in Dunkin' Donuts, so. All right.
Fantastic.
Mr. Tan, what are you trying to do? Renew your license?
Yes.
Okay. Michelle, do we have any reason to?
Didn't apply for a common victualler license originally. I think he just went down to the Board of Health and got his licensing through there.
Okay,
So we had to have him apply for a common victualler.
okay. So everything's copacetic now and up to snuff? Okay, any questions by the board?
No, I'll make a motion to approve the
I'll
license.
second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments, questions, concerns?
Just that you are
Compliments?
a great addition to this town.
All right. Thank you.
Your
We will keep
Food
it
is
up.
fabulous, everyone's friendly. Thank you.
Right,
And
thank you.
clean.
I have heard good reports
Yeah.
about your restaurant.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, me too.
Thank you.
It's been vacant a number of years, so it's welcome to
All right.
fill up another storefront in our town.
I will.
We'll keep up the good work down there, okay? We appreciate any and all business in Carver,
Okay.
so, except monkey business.
And you got a vote?
Yes, having a first and a second to, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Tan. Keep up the good work, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the Collins Center report update with the Town Building Study Committee. And Mr. Dan Ryan and Mr. Stephen Pratt.
Mr. Chairman, I proposed this at the last meeting because I was concerned about the funding of the Fire Station Building Committee, and I met with the Town Building Study Committee last week, and I think we came to a little bit of a compromise. I think you understand where I'm coming from, but I'll let you explain from your point of view if you want, Dan.
Okay, so again, when we met previously to talk about the fire station project and the Collins Center report, Mr. Franny had some questions and wanted to meet with the committee to discuss those. And in a nutshell, there's two options you have for funding. As you know, we took the personal property new growth, so the new personal property growth each year, and we've set up the Capital Building Stabilization Fund, which allows you to vote the money into that, and then once you kick a project off, then the mechanism that we had defined previously was that you would take that money out by a 2/3 vote at town meeting. So Mr. Franny is proposing another option, which would be to actually take the difference of the personal property new growth and subtract out directly the bond payment before putting the balance into the Capital Building Stabilization Fund. It's an option, so it's something for you to consider. So from a Town Building Study Committee, I think it's really up to the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen, to determine the best method during the budgeting process, whatever seems to make sense to the town to do that. From our perspective, and as supported by the Collins Center report, we looked at the need, we looked at the site, and we looked at the funding proposal, and that was all verified in the report, and now the town, again, can proceed when you deem that you're ready to proceed.
My concern was that there really wasn't a true commitment of the funds. It's money put into the Building Stabilization Fund that has to be voted in every year and voted out every year. And I remember back when we first got the new growth, personal property new growth for the N-Star generator that was up the street, that we didn't find out until a couple of weeks before town meeting. And when we went to town meeting, we didn't have the mechanism at the time because we didn't have your committee at the time, but that was all voted right into the budget. And I'm afraid that that money's sitting out there right now, waiting to be voted in to the Building Stabilization Fund, leaves it hanging out in the balance similar to that $700,000. It could be voted into other budgets or into other line items, and that's what I'm afraid of, because we've already authorized this project. And if that does happen, then we won't really have the money available to pay for that debt, and then what do we do from here?
That is a valid concern, and again, I think when you're doing the budgetary process, you'll have to work out the best mechanism for appropriating the funds into the bond once you do the bond.
Okay, Steve?
I think the other thing that we should recall is how we got to the Capital Building Stabilization Fund, because I think that was a critical, discussion item when we were presenting this in 2011. If we go back to, Clark Rowell, the financial advisor, Rick Manley, and some of their observations as to what the town had not been able to do for all these many years, which was not spend all the money that came into the town every year. All personal property new growth, all new growth was spent every year. And so what we demonstrated over the past 3 years is that we can carve out some monies and using personal property new growth sort of as the proxy to say we can put money into a stabilization fund, we can do this so that we can convince any bond issuers that we're not putting it all into operating budgets. And I think it's a little disservice to say everything goes in the operating budget, because we all know that we have lease programs, we know we have other debt like the town hall and the library bonds, which are within the tax levy, which get voted on at town meeting as a line item. So while we've not demonstrated that we can save money prior to 2011, we have demonstrated, and I think that was the basis for us doing it. Getting the bond, getting the project started are the key components to being able to go out to say, issue us some bonds. And I think it's important that we at least continue with what we've already have established, And if how we go forward and pay the debt service with those bonds is really the mechanics of town meeting, and up to Mr. Malinowski and the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. But I just want to remind everybody where we came from and why we did what we did, because we had not been able to demonstrate our ability to do it.
Members of the board, any input? Dick?
And I think when we made the commitment at town meeting for that stabilization fund, I felt like we were making somewhat of a commitment to take money from that personal property new growth for that process.
That's correct.
So,
That's correct.
But what is your commitment for the future gonna be? Is it gonna be all personal property new growth going forward, or are you
I
gonna?
think we're at a point where we're deciding how that will happen as we evaluate what our budgets and things are
Because basically,
each
when-
year.
basically, when you do your budgets, you primarily handle your line item budgets first, and then you do your
So what do you
your
say?
articles afterwards. In putting the money into the building stabilization fund is a warrant article. It's not part of
Yeah.
the line item budgets, whereas if you had made a commitment, it would be in the line item budgets. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that we made a kind of a philosophical commitment when we adopted that stabilization fund to take money out of that personal property new growth thing.
Can we
I'm in
turn, can we
agreement.
turn that into a line item?
You could turn it into a line item, you would have to go out and borrow the money, but I think it's problematic to try and do that, and maybe Mike can explain, Mike Malinowski, because we had a little bit of a conversation about when you go out to bond, they do a bond rating of your, when you do bond, and apparently the bond rating agencies have been looking at a lot of your financial policies and procedures, which our town is fairly weak in right now. So, am I explaining it properly?
That is correct, although I think that we can quickly come up to speed and correct a lot of these and document a lot of policies and procedures that may have happened 2 years, at least from an intent from town meeting, but is it well documented beyond a vote, which is what the bond council, the rating agencies are going to look at. I think what's important is that the rating agencies have modified their evaluation process over the last couple of years, particularly with what happened to Detroit, or what happened to Central Falls down in Rhode Island, where you're having communities that have gone bankrupt. We are not that. But my point is they are, determine the credit worthiness of a community. So if they're gonna lend $8 million for a new fire station, and people are going to look at, do I invest in that? They're gonna invest in communities that have a higher bond rating. That all being said, is that another change that's happened is how communities start to deal with their OPEB liability. There are the post-employment benefits, pension liabilities. Healthcare and non-pension liabilities, which is healthcare and life insurance. So those are gonna have to be addressed as well. I think we can quickly, going back to where I started, quickly correct those things. And one of the things that I was gonna discuss tonight with the board is establishing a financial advisory committee to the town manager, where I would pull in a couple members from the finance committee, a couple members from the capital outlay committee, the superintendent, a member of the school committee, a member of the board of selectmen, the town accountant, and the business manager, and we would have some strategy meetings just to figure out how we quickly pull these documents together so that we can make these things happen. So that's another element that I'm looking at as a mechanism to make sure we can document everything that needs to be done to move forward, so that when we're in a position, which I don't anticipate being that far away, to go out and do some bonding, that we go out there with our best foot forward. Because the last thing we want to do is to have someone come back and say, your bond rating's going down, because it's very hard to have it to reverse that and go up, because they want to see multiple year trends. So again, my main point in here, and what Jack and I discussed, is to make sure that when we go out, which is going to be soon, is that we as a community, as Carver, go out with our best foot forward to the financial lending institutions, so that they know that we are a good credit risk, and that we have developed the policies and procedures to how we're gonna manage ourselves.
See, right now in the mechanism, there's a permanent cash flow of $400,000.
Correct.
I think Steve and I agreed that it probably should be like 465,000, because I felt like we were cheated out of the first year. but that's all water over the dam, but, 400,000, whatever this year's amount might be, I've heard that might be as high as 200,000. Once we establish all these financial principles and stuff and go out to borrow the money, I think we should take that out of the cash flow and put it in the line item and make a permanent commitment. Don't leave it out there hanging year after year after year for, run the risk of it not being voted in any particular year. Once it's in the line items, while it's not a permanent commitment, it's closer than being a warrant article.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, we have to remember that, if we're talking 2015, for this project, we're not even talking about full debt service payments in 2015. You're probably talking interest only for that year, and then it wouldn't be until 2016 before you'd even start talking about paying a full debt service, whatever the basis is. So, I again, I don't disagree. To me, as long as the personal property is used as the proxy for establishing whether it be debt service or what goes into the stabilization fund, I think it's the conversation we need to have with bond counsel, with Clark Rowell, to say, have we done enough to demonstrate our ability to set aside monies for capital projects to be used within the levy limit? That's, to me, is the key to this whole thing. And the answer to that is yes. How we go forward with it, it's a matter of town meeting, it's a matter of the board, finance committee, and Mr. Malinowski. That's, to me, is what I think we have demonstrated with, 4 separate votes at town meetings to support this. And, while I can't guarantee who's gonna be at the next town meeting, I think we have provided a pattern of 4 town meetings supporting this. And not just, lightly supporting it, very much overwhelmingly supporting it. And I think that's an important message that we can bring to future town meetings.
Mike mentioned OPEB liability. I met with the county director of the retirement board, and they had a good year this year. They earned 17%. They only have to earn 8.5%. So he told me that back in 2008, they incurred a loss of 30%. And with this 17%, they wiped out the 30%. So now they're back to where they were just before the crash in 2008. So that's a positive sign. They have to earn 8.5%. But, what's really incumbent upon the town is that we don't pay any extra money into the retirement board. So it's like we have a loan where we're paying interest only. We're not paying any principal. So that even though, they had that good return on the money that they made, we're still falling behind. So we really need to come up with a plan for the pension liability as well as OPEB. But, back to this here, that's my concern. So that would be for a future boards of selectmen or finance committee.
I think that's part of the Financial Policy and Procedure Committee that the town administrator was talking about establishing, addressing all of those issues through that, so.
And then for a brief update on the Collins Center report, as what's on the line item here. They did meet with the school department on the 8th. There was a good meeting there. I attended the beginning part of it, but Mr. Malinowski attended the whole meeting. And then that resulted in a meeting with the MSBA. So the school department and Mr. Malinowski went up there to have one meeting with the MSBA, and I understand there might even be a second meeting scheduled. And if you want, he could probably give you a quick 2-minute update on where they stand and what the result of that meeting with the MSBA was.
Well, just so you know how I've been spending my time, since I started here Wednesday, 8 o'clock Wednesday is when this first meeting took place between the Collins Center and the school to go over that project. I've probably had 30 meetings since I've been here, and probably 25% of my time has been focused on the elementary school, including a trip to Boston yesterday to meet with the MSBA. Where I want to leave this at this point, because there's still more work to be done, is I want the community and the Board of Selectmen to understand and be aware of that through those meetings, which is a very productive meeting. I think having the meeting on Monday made sure that everyone had the same information. There have been some staffing changes up in Boston, and just over time, we needed to have everybody that was a stakeholder in the room hear what the facts are. That being said, is that we are going to be setting up another meeting at the end of this month The MSBA and the school and with the Collins Center, we are now fully exploring two different alternatives. One, the existing site, and another location at the high school. When the study went forward, there was an option, I believe it was G&H, that looked at a new building that was non-site specific. In our discussions with the MSBA's, we're gonna take those plans for a new building and explore how they could fit on the parcel at the high school. In addition to that, the Collins Center is gonna meet here next week, and I've set up a meeting with our town planner, Director of Community Development, Planning to Community Development, Conservation, and also Board of Health, so that we can explore those siting issues on the property. And as we know, we've got well issues, we've got septic issues, and to see again how it could fit on that property. So rest assured, both options are gonna be looked at. There's no decision on one option or the other, but they both will be fully explored.
Any questions by the board?
I do have an article, a line item on the agenda for making an appointment to the school building committee appointment, so when we get to
Let me address
that.
that too,
yeah.
because that was one of the things that came out of the MSBA meeting, is that right now it's premature to appoint anyone to a board because it has to follow a certain process. That process cannot begin until the MSBA invites the town to go forward with an application. That could happen as early as the end of the month, so I think we could readdress that back in the first meeting in February. But we have to logically wait for that step to happen, is what they informed me. That being said, my understanding is the chairman of the Board of Selectmen was on there before, and that is by position, is what they told me too. It's not by name. And also the town administrator, who's in essence, the applicant for the town, was also on there by position as well. So it carries with the position as things go forward.
Well, my reason for doing that was I wanted to make this whole process as transparent as we could, because I attended that meeting last week with you as well. I met you here at Town Hall and put you to work right away
Got
at
me
8
going
o'clock.
right away.
But I heard some things that I didn't want to hear there that were surprising to me. And I felt that, they shouldn't be all discussed in a meeting behind closed doors. Things should be out in the open and be transparent so people understand what's going on, good, bad, or otherwise. And I also think that, with the school building committee, much as possible, it should be televised, so that the whole town is part of this.
And as I've professed throughout my whole interview process, I'm all about transparency and integrity, and that is what will happen as we go forward. I think, in my observation, part of the meeting that we had, there was some misinformation based upon miscommunication. Not that anyone was particularly wrong at that meeting we had on Wednesday, which was more of a staff-type meeting, but all of those items were cleared up on Monday, so that I know, which is what you've hired me to do, is to make sure that I know what the facts are, and we can go down the middle of the road, apolitical, as to what's the best project for the town, both in the short and the long term, and how do we make sure that we are responsible for efficiently and effectively using the town resources to pay for those.
And that makes me feel better, because it was disturbing to me to have that little bit of a dispute between the parties at that meeting. So now that you said that they're all cleared up, that makes me feel a lot better.
And rest assured, and the superintendent is supportive of this as well, as I will be in all meetings as this project goes forward, representing the town's interest.
Good. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, seeing none. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, items for discussion and possible vote, acceptance of donations and gifts. And this is from our town accountant. Attached, please find a list of donations and gifts made to the town of Carver for the period of July 1, 2013 to December 31, 2013. All donations to the town should be accepted by the board. It is often harder to capture the smaller donations, but the auditors have stated that accepting all donations of smaller amounts on a quarterly basis will suffice. Which sounds good to me.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I know that the Council on Aging runs monthly fundraisers But I haven't seen
Just
anything
going to
on
ask
here
that.
where there's money going into a donation account for the Council on Aging.
Okay, maybe we could
So,
ask Mr. Malinowski to check on that
Yeah, we're-
once a month, they run a fundraiser.
in his spare time.
And just general donations that may be geared towards the Council on Aging. Do we know where those funds go? Yeah,
So just so I understand your question that you're asking for, so we get your answer back,
The
is,
Council on Aging runs a dinner once a month. It's like $5 a person, and there's maybe 60 or 80 people come
been
to
there
it.
once, it's very good food.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
But
Had nothing
So
to do with
that
the
money
fact it was free, right?
No, I
Money-
paid for it.
money should be
Jack
going
paid
into
for
a
it, right?
donation account,
Mhm.
because that's what it is. It's a fundraiser, so. But I didn't see it on here, so I was wondering if you could verify where that money's going to. Because the town pays for the food and they pay for the help, the cook and everyone to do all of that, so it should be coming back into a donation account for the Council on Aging, so maybe you can find out where it goes to.
Some of the functions are run in conjunction with the Friends of the Council on Aging too, Mike, so I don't know where the division between those would be.
But if the Friends were running it, they should be paying for the food and the
Yeah,
expenses.
well, I'm just saying, I don't,
he's just-
I didn't say those functions,
Yeah.
there are functions
Yeah.
that they have, yeah.
And just general donations in general to the Council on Aging, because I didn't notice that either. It very well could be going into the Friends of Council on, there's so many accounts coming from the Council on Aging.
I make a motion, we approve this.
We have a motion? Do we have a
Second.
And a second. Any further comments, questions, concerns, recommendations? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous, Michelle. Thank you, Mike. If you could just take a look into that, we can always add that as an addendum to next meeting and approve that if that's what we
Put
do.
it in my report next meeting.
Carver Lakeville Animal Control Agreement. This is something that we do on a regular basis, I guess. Since we don't have our own animal shelter, we have an agreement with the town of Lakeville to cover some of our operations dealing with animals. So,
I make a motion, we approve.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions?
was-
Dick?
A couple of years ago, I visited, and I thought that the Lakeville Animal Shelter was very well run. It was $11 a day at that time for an animal to board there, but it's only gone up to 15. And there's no way, I mean, our total budget for animal sheltering was around $1,000 at that time, and I don't know how we could build a shelter and carry it through for that kind of money, so.
Yeah,
I
thi-
would
This
support
is a
this.
perfect example of regionalization of services. Many towns can share. I just read, they got an article put in the paper from the Bridgewater or Rainham voted to do this, and then Enterprise wrote a whole article about it and had pictures of the animal shelter in the paper and everything. So there's numerous towns that do it, like Dick said. It costs us so much more to maintain our own for a few dollars, so a bunch of towns getting together and supporting this is well worth it on our behalf.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, Audit Committee status.
I put this on the agenda, and Mike and I also had a little meeting about this, because we're gonna have another audit being issued, and we still don't have a full committee in force, and Mike had mentioned about his governance committee. So, is the governance committee different than your financial planning committee?
Well, not necessarily. I think what we're looking at here, as I understand the audit committee, is to go through the audit, what the issues are, figure out how to address the issues. And I think a governance committee could take that to the next step. Instead of instead of looking at the past, it's more of what's the present, what the issue is, and how do we correct that going forward. Where an audit committee is somewhat more negative, a governance committee builds on the past, but then figures out how to solve it in the solution, in the future. So, where I know that we only have 2 members on the audit committee, I have gotten word back that our audit should be available the very beginning of February from Powers and Sullivan. All of our information has been presented to them, and they're in the process of just processing that. Also, the DOR is looking at their management review and potentially coming in and doing some additional support to back that up. That all being said, it seems to me from what I've learned so far is that having a governance committee that's focused on solving, the top 3 or 4 or 5 issues and making recommendations as to how we can improve the operations of the town so that we don't have any findings in the future from the audit is maybe a better way of putting this all together. I think we get to the same conclusion, but it's more looking to the long term than just a negative component of the past. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on this.
And typically, the auditor comes in, you have what's called an exit interview with certain key members of your financial team. And, the management report, in many cases, has been used as a political weapon by certain members of whatever committees, when it shouldn't be. When it's really meant to be, it's critical in nature all the time, but it's meant to be that you take that and turn it into positive aspects. So I think maybe the audit committee isn't the way we should go, because there's been a lot of dispute back and forth between all the members of the Board of Selectmen. Maybe it's better to put it back in your hands, when you know where you have to go, the direction you have to go in.
What I'd like to do with the board's permission is come back with a recommendation at your next meeting, is to a proposal as to how to move, the issue of an audit committee, maybe morphing into a governance committee, again, trying to look at the future and figure out how we can make some positive changes that are well vetted through the committee that can be ready for town meeting. So if there's no objections, I'd like to bring that back at the meeting, at your next meeting.
I think that's a good idea. So I'll make a motion, we table this till the next meeting.
We have a motion to table?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Also, Mike, you said, you mentioned talking to the DOR. You haven't contacted them yet, have you?
I was emailing today.
Okay, all right. Excellent. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of tabling this
Aye.
item for the time being, please say aye.
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 And they
Opposed?
were on vacation responding to me today.
Oh,
Wow.
state employee?
He was. Hard worker, that one.
All right,
I
all
put-
those in favor was
You just said aye.
unanimous? Aye?
Yep,
Opposed?
unanimous.
It's unanimous.
I put the next item on because it was part of our contract negotiations with Michael, and so I told him it was gonna be on here. I'm kinda hoping that he might have reached out to a facilitator. Maybe you can give us some information on that.
Yes, I have reached out, and there's one individual that's basically the guru of facilitating municipal governments, particularly towns, boards of selectmen, and his name is Jeff Nutty. And Jeff Nutty has served as a member of a board of selectmen in his community, and he now is the town manager in Franklin, and has been there for a little while, and Franklin now operates under a town council. He has 30-plus years of experience in the industry and writes papers, presents at all conferences, and when you're asking anyone involved in municipal government, who do you go to kind of help bridge, sometimes political divides, you bring Jeff in, because Jeff is a facilitator that can come in and work with all parties to figure out what is the common objectives the town wants to accomplish. And I did talk about this in my interview process, that, what I need to know is what you guys want me to do. Now, granted, issues is deal with the finances, run the town on the day-to-day operations, help the fire chief to make sure he gets his stuff out, the police chief, the schools, et cetera. That goes without saying. But what do you want us to accomplish, whether it's myself or the rest of the staff within, during the year? Where do you want us to put our attention? And that's where this facilitator comes in to help put in writing, in essence, where you want us to devote our efforts to make improvements in the town. The exercise usually takes around 3 to 4 hours, so I'm gonna warn you on that right now, that you're gonna put out a block of time. And it's something that's, it's an open public meeting. You generally do it around a table in a more relaxed environment, because it is more of a facilitation environment. And I think it'll be good. I think it'll be good to just put aside any political issues and really focus on what it is the board as a whole wants to have us accomplish. So that being said, is that if the board, what I'd like to do is to bring him in. The cost will be less than $1,000. I need to get some dates from him when he's available. Like to get it done over the next 3 weeks or so. And I don't know what else to say about it.
And basically, as part of the interview process, at least with Helen and Dick and I, this will serve as a basis for evaluating Mike's performance for the coming year. So it's twofold. It gives us a sense of direction, and it also gives us a mechanism to base our evaluation on. Now, Michael had mentioned that name to me, and I thought that for best practices, I should at least get 2 other quotes. So I didn't really get the quotes, because when I mentioned that we wanted a facilitator, both people that I spoke to immediately came up with Jeff Nutting and said he was the one that, no one would ever probably give a quote, because he was so efficient and so, well-respected in the field. And I had talked to Jim Purcell. He had been here for 6 months. He mentioned him and how well he was qualified for it. And I also mentioned it to the Collins Center. They're a whole big organization. And they came back and said this was the guy to go with, so.
And there's no need to put it out to bid.
No, we don't need to. It's only $1,000. But I figured just for best practices, at least, but, that's what I did, and that's what I came back with.
Do we have a motion
I'll make the motion.
Well,
and a second?
I'll
there's
second it.
nothing here to
Well,
make a
yeah,
vote on.
what are we motioning? We're motioning that we're going to
Have a meeting.
have the meeting, yeah, okay, that's the motion.
But nothing is said here about making a vote.
But it's under items of
Items of
discussion and
discussion.
We
possible
don't really
vote.
need to take the vote, because it's in his it's in his
I was just,
contract.
yeah, we put it into the
Oh, okay.
into his
Let me
contract.
rephrase this. If, with no one disagreeing with this, then I'll go forward and work
Right.
out a contract to bring him in, and we'll put together a tape if there's no objections.
So we need to
Because it
have,
is in his
we need to have a
agreement.
separate meeting with him.
Correct. This will be a separate
Open
meeting.
public meeting.
It'll be an open public meeting with the focus being on the selectmen.
Just one comment. I remember when we were interviewing you, that, a concern, the concern I had was how are you as the administrator gonna evaluate our town and decide where your exact goals were gonna be? So this answers that question for me, anyway, so that's good.
Excellent. So we're all in agreement?
Absolutely.
Charge?
Charge. Next up, request 2 departmental reviews by town auditor per the request for proposal.
I also put these on here, they're in our audit
Contract.
proposal, and I couldn't find it, but I did find it in one of the responses, and I brought it up once before at the selectmen's meeting, that, Jim Purcell said it's common in most auditor contracts. I don't know if you've seen it, Michael, that usually you have additional requests that the Board of Selectmen can make. So mine would be for the Conservation Commission with an emphasis on Wetlands Protection Fund and the Conservation Trust Fund. And on the assessors for calculation of so-called DIF calculations, we voted them in several years ago as far as the Water Department district, and I just wanted to make sure those were still all online. But I'm sure that the auditor has other procedures that he'll apply to that as well.
So this would be for the FY14 audit that we haven't completed yet, because the FY13, they're gonna wrap up and give us to us beginning of February.
This
So
would be,
that's-
no, this would be for the FY13 audit.
Well, 13 audit's pretty much all done. So they've already gone out and done all their research. They're not coming back to the town anymore. We'd have to specify these these departments, I believe, in the FY14. Now, having said that,
Yeah.
I haven't met with the auditor over Carver, but for an hour conversation I had during the interview process. So what I'd like to do is to first have that meeting with them, because they may know something that none of us know, that they may have found something else that they want to further investigate that's a higher value or higher risk issue. And so to commit today to just focus on these two departments without having any input from that independent third party, I would recommend we don't do that today and just let me have that initial conversation with them. And then based upon that, then let's look as to where the best need is to focus on the town.
Okay, so you'll make an effort to have it done for 6/13, but if it doesn't, then we'll put it into this year's. audit.
Correct.
Right.
And I do believe, and I will confirm this, but that this FY13 budget that's, again, they've already done all their field work. They've put their last request into the accountant 2 weeks ago, that they've closed that out, and now they're just in the process of writing that up. So I think we missed this cycle, and I think we'll have to go into the next cycle. I will confirm that, but I think that's where it is.
Yeah, because I know that everything's done electronically now with the
Now,
audit firms,
We'll
so.
say when their report comes out,
Mhm.
and in their management letter, all of a sudden, we have, something that's in a neon red light that's blinking. We will then need to investigate that if we have something to that level. I'm not aware of anything yet, but, again, I need to have that conversation with them, which I have not had yet.
You'll have that soon, Mike?
Correct.
Okay.
And through you, Mr. Chair, if there is no obvious blatant, is there a way we can set up to, ongoing, to have, on a rotating basis, different departments being audited? For example, Council on Aging has a lot of cash going in and out. They have a lot of donations coming in and out, and so that too would be a very important area to be auditing as well. I think every department, it's prudent to
Right.
And I
audit it,
think,
so
Rotate 'em.
it's hard to just make a blanket,
and that's a good issue to bring up, the facilitator
right,
meeting that we're gonna have, that we need to have
yeah.
better communication of, things coming back to us through the town administrator.
So,
All right.
is that possible?
That is possible, but can also be done internally too. And one of the things that I will be working with Meg on, and she has a list of issues that she's already brought to my attention that she's picked up over the last 6 months that need to be addressed. And one of those is doing internal audits,
Right,
where, and you have to balance the staff time for that, but to actually have her, go into a particular department and do an audit on that department if there is some particular issue that we need to look at. That gets into also cash management policies, it gets into purchase orders. There's a few things that I'm gonna be bringing forward that need to be implemented so that we can have better financial management. So again, cash management policy, which I think is what you're talking
Yep.
about, purchase orders, which don't really exist in the way that they should, which need to tie into your software package. So that when a department puts out a purchase order to purchase something for $4,000, and they have $8,000 in the budget, well then, the budget line item, before that's even spent, needs to show that there's only $4,000 left. What I'm also hearing, and I'm still trying to verify this, is that our current accounting software is only being used by 23 communities in the state right now, and that company is going to cease doing support service for that beginning July 1st. Once I verify that, that's going to mean that we're going to need to purchase a new accounting software that isn't
This is,
expensive, and it also requires some immediate, training to make the transition so that you can have a new software package up and running over July. Why I'm talking about this tonight is because whenever I see an issue that alarms me, this alarms me,
yeah,
because the time that it's gonna take us to procure, interview, hire, merge data together, and to be up and running by July 1st, there's not a lot of time for this issue, so.
I think you need to put that on our agenda
Yeah.
to discuss it further, because let me tell you, back, even before I was elected treasurer collector, they were going down, down, down. They were bleeding, and they ended up selling out to someone. But I believe, and I'd have to verify it with the present town accountant, I believe the prior town accountant had gone out to try and procure someone, and there was a little bit of shenanigans going on while they stayed here, so we need to really get to the bottom of that. It's been very difficult to deal with.
And from what I'm hearing, and I haven't had a chance to view the software package, I'm not familiar with the one that Carver's using right now, but according to the accountant and others, it's not a robust system. It's not an integrated system. It doesn't, it allows people to go back and make changes after the fact. Whereas when you have the appropriate financial software, it'll be integrated between the schools and the town, which is important. As I mentioned, the POs, that'll be automatic, that you know how much you have left in the account. But more importantly, it's a login type issue. So when you change something, there's a date stamp that says that I changed X, and then, you know, you can always put down notes as to why you did that, which allows the auditors to come back, if there ever was an issue, they can track it back through the data logs.
And that's not available
No.
with
That is
our
my
card.
understanding.
Serious internal control issues
Holy
have been
mackerel.
there all along.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Jack, you may know this answer. This isn't the software that we just rolled out
No, it was, they
like 2 years ago.
tried to develop something, and they originally told me it was gonna be 7,000, now it's up to 14,000. But we can explain it much further, if you put a line item on our agenda, that we can explain it, because it's really, you know, I'd almost like to think that the town would have a suit against these people.
Yeah, this is a critical issue.
Yeah.
I will say that Meg, in her foresight, did put a request into the Capital Outlay Committee a few weeks ago before I even got here. So it's on one of her top items that she needs to deal with too, so, it's not, I didn't find this, I'm just acting on it.
And through you, Mr. Chair, just one quick question. Is it possible, or are we privy to getting a copy of Meg's concerns so far that she has given to you?
Yeah, let me, what I'm gonna do is, what I wanna come back to at your next meeting and kind of summarize the issues,
Okay,
because,
I respect that.
Yeah.
No
and
problem.
I,
She
and I
had
will
been-
put those together.
Had she been discussing those issues with Jim Pasella as well?
She had, but keep in mind that Jim did a lot of great work here for the town. But he was trying to deal with the emergency issues.
Yep.
And he did a great job of those, and those things that couldn't fit within his schedule, or that were better suited to wait till this position came on board, he did. But he was aware of the issue as well.
And has she been discussing them with our auditor as well?
I have not asked that question yet, but I would not be surprised if our auditor doesn't bring up some issues with this.
Okay.
Okay, but for related discussion, different agenda item.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, we're deviating a little bit off the beaten track here, but yeah, Helen, I think that's, to answer your question, I think that's the way you'll probably see it set up, is that they'll be rotated amongst issues and departments, and, you know, nobody's being targeted, nobody's being singled out,
Well,
everybody's
that's
gonna go
what I wanna
through
make
it, so.
sure.
Okay. Appointment of Board of Selectmen representatives to the elementary school building, we've already agreed to,
Table it. I make
Table
a
this.
motion, we table it.
you make a motion to table, have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a
I
second.
apologize, I had to
Any
think.
further comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Request for one-day special license, Carver Sportsman's Club, January 31st, 5 PM to midnight.
Make a move, we approve that.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any comments, questions, concerns? Mr. Johnson is here to answer them if there are. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
And one recusal, Michelle. I'm recusing myself as a member of the club. Okay. Request for use of Sampson's Pond for fishing tournaments. Mass Fish Finders on April 27, 2014, from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., and Mass Bass Busters, August 3rd, 2014, Sunday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. There'll be 8 vehicles there. I think these are pretty standard requests we get every year from the same group. I don't recall having heard any issues or problems.
Well, just one issue, the one on August 3rd, it's a Sunday, right in the dead heat of summer. There's gonna be 8 extra vehicles there. How many vehicles will the location handle? I mean, we're letting these people come in, and we have residents that wanna use the beach facilities.
Yeah, typically they park down by the boat ramp, Jack, and they don't block access to Sampson's Pond.
Okay.
Okay, so,
There's a separate beach for
yeah,
residents.
it's never been an issue. They actually park across the street. The landowner over there has always allowed them to do that, and there's never been a problem with it, so.
And the town beach is totally separate.
Yes. Yep.
No,
Further comments, questions, concerns?
Have you got a motion yet?
Nope.
I make a motion, we accept both those dates.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? It's unanimous, Michelle. Moving on, approval of minutes of December 10th and 17th,
Did you forget
2013.
the
Yep.
bike,
How about the bike ride? Did we forget
bike
that one?
ride?
Oh, I'm sorry, geez, missed it. Request for approval of the Cape Cod Gateway MS Bike Ride, June 28th through the 29th.
I make a motion, we approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, concerns? Information on this? Anybody like to elaborate?
Police chief here, I know we usually ask,
I think he
was.
already left.
Yep.
Yeah.
well, I assume he would be very familiar with what it's about.
This stuff is usually all vetted through him
Yep.
before it gets to the
It's a two-day
agenda.
ride that
Yeah.
starts up in, I think, Quincy, and then I
Great.
think goes down to Plymouth, and then the next day they go all the way down to Wellfleet.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they use the main highways, and it's, because it's so long, it's not like a big group, you close it down the road. It's
Yeah,
people
yeah,
running on the
yeah, a
road,
lot of
but it's
people
a
zoom in.
constant ride.
They come down 58, go through the forest and take it that route. We have a motion?
Make the motion, that we accept that.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments, questions, concerns, recommendations? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? It's unanimous, Michelle. Okay, approval of the minutes now. We have
Yeah, this is,
December 10th, it was just Helen, Dick, and Jack. And vote. We're gonna have to separate these, so let's take the 10th first of all.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of December 10th.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, concerns, changes? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the December 10th meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And
It's
I'll,
unanimous.
and
Three,
I'll abstain.
3-0.
To abstain.
Okay. Now we got the minute meetings,
Minute meetings.
yeah. The meeting minutes from December 17th, 2013. And
I just had one change on this, on page 3. I know I originally said the second meeting in January meant the second Tuesday, and I think I clarified that at the meeting. So then it will fall in line with what the minutes are. For any motion to table until the second meeting, it should be the first meeting in January. Franny made the motion to table until January 14th, so it falls right in line.
so we're good?
No, so it should be the first meeting in January. It should
Oh,
read the
okay.
first meeting.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All right.
Should we, yeah.
I meant the second Tuesday, but I said the second
That-
meeting,
Yep.
and I
That's
think
something-
I remember
I
that.
clarified it
Yeah,
at the
you did.
meeting.
Yeah. Is it something we can just do a pen change to and
Yeah,
We'll amend it.
approve, amend it?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes of December 17th as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments, questions, concerns, recommendations? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. No nays. Okay, citizens' participation. Mr. Forrester, come on down.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to talk.
Good evening, Mr. Forrester.
Rod Forrester, 13 Lincoln Circle, Cranberry Village. My particular question to you is not on the agenda, but I thought maybe you could get back to me at another time. And this particular issue concerns me down in Cranberry Village because there was an amount of money taken out of our stabilization fund sometime back for the purchase of a vehicle in conjunction with the North Carver Water Commission to take care of the North Carver property and our property, our well situation, this vehicle. So my question is this: that being said, I find this particular vehicle that was purchased sitting in the corner of the town hall parking lot day after day, you know, and I could be wrong, but it doesn't appear to go anywhere. So the question is, what is being done with this vehicle? Is it being used by someone to service these two facilities? Do we own this? Are we renting it? Or if it's just sitting there collecting dust, why? You know, should it be disposed of, sold, and the money split up between the two facilities and put back in our enterprise fund? You know, if it's not gonna be used, it's just sitting there. It has a plow hooked up to it. Obviously, for the type of roads that it plows, it's a V plow versus a straight plow that can be turned sideways, you know? So that is my question, and maybe you could get back to me at another time.
Absolutely, because I don't have the answer for you at this time. I know that, that maintenance is subcontracted out to a private company on the water department. I too see the vehicle over there, but I'm not sure whether it's,
You've seen it yourself.
right, but I'm not sure whether they come in, park their vehicles, and then they get in and use that vehicle or not, so.
Doesn't look like it's moved, that's
Yeah.
all. You know, it looks like it's in the exact spot.
I think our new town administrator could check on that rather
All
quickly.
right, well, thank you very much, sir.
We'll get an answer to you on that,
And
Ron, okay?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I've seen it parked out there, but I've also seen someone driving it around town. So maybe you can find out the answer. It's probably just being garaged there. They don't let the person take it home. with
Right. That would be my guess, but I don't know for sure.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
May I
Anyone
say-
else?
I'll say regarding that,
Mr. Belbin?
I'm just mentioning what Rod is talking about. I mean, the last couple of weeks, it has seemed to have just never moved. But I had seen someone prior to that using it. I think it was the fellow from the consulting firm.
Mr. Belbin, have you met
Good
Mr.
evening.
Malinowski?
No, congratulations on your position.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. We really stand behind what you've started and hopefully continue on with us for many, many years. Robert Belbin, 26 Gate Street. Couple of different issues. The first one was the open meeting law. Are we gonna be having any more trainings in the open meeting law? I think there's some violations that have happened and in between the last one to this one, and we need it resolved so everyone's on the same page.
Mr. Chairman, I talked to town council in that late last week, and we did talk about scheduling some additional open meeting law training programs. So that is in the works, and it's on our radar screen.
Excellent.
With the ongoing change of people, you know, within town government and the political arena, it's something that probably ought to be done a couple times a year, just to keep it fresh in everybody's mind. So, thanks for bringing that up, Bob, and as you can see, Mr. Malinowski already has a handle on that, so.
Excellent. The next one would be, I know the last time I think I spoke here, I asked about policies and procedures for the town, that we're really lacking in those. And I know they were being worked on. Just want to make sure that they're still being worked on, and once they're done, that they're rolled out to the boards and committees so we can take a look at them and have our input. And
I think that's part and parcel of what the new town administrator is trying to set up with his governance committee and some other things so that he can establish best practices, policies, and procedures for the entire town to run on and have documents to refer to. So he is aware of that. He is kicking the ball off, getting us going. We've got 5 years of his time, and hopefully we're gonna have that accomplished well within that period.
excellent. All right, otherwise, I want to say Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you, you
Right,
too,
and
Bob.
Same to you.
Great time to change.
Okay.
Thank
Bob,
you
were
guys
you
very
here
much.
at the beginning of the meeting?
No, my daughter was
No,
at
the re-
church.
No, that's okay. The reason I'm mentioning it is we did talk about policies and procedures, and that Mike is already working on starting with the financial procedures and policies, so.
Excellent.
okay, so-
Thank you very much.
Should take care of that issue over on West Street.
We will.
Thank you.
Yes.
Let me know if you need me.
No problem.
Okay.
We'll take care of it
Thank you.
once the weather gets better.
Okay. Anybody else? Citizens' participation. Mr. Kaiser, come on up and let's talk about it. You're looking very dapper tonight, I must add.
Well, I saw you the other night in your suit, and I just thought I'd try to mimic you.
You've one-upped me. What can I say?
We're on the same plane.
Be careful he does't see you in your police uniform.
Flannels, we have suits, and people that usually.
Looking sharp, looking sharp. Bring it on, sir.
Rich Kaiser, 2A Meadowbrook Way. As some of you may know, we are having or experiencing problems over there at the Meadowbrook Apartments. My time into this has been over a year, as maybe one or two of you know, and I'm looking for some way to help these people out. One in particular that we all know. I'm looking for some input and help. I hope that we can come up with a meeting in the very near future to get some others involved and see what Carver's responsibility is. Because there's some people that are going to get hurt. Whereas I believe the town does own the land. It may be a representative from the board. Just pace the property. Take a look. See what I see. I want to help these people.
And so do we. I mean, you're all our constituents. Believe me, we're all concerned about it, Rich. And in fact, things have been going on in the background. Dick has met with the director of the South Shore Housing.
Today.
I talked to the,
Very good.
I talked to the director of Halkey Management yesterday. So we have some wheels in motion. I think what I would like to do, first of all, is schedule a private meeting with the director of South Shore Housing and maybe Mr. Milanowski. And myself and Dick have been involved so far, so I maybe the two of us, unless somebody else is.
You do understand I didn't want to dump this into your lap.
No.
These are
No,
concerns
it's
that,
been aware.
Yeah,
It's
you're not
been-
dumping anything in our lap. This is our job.
It's been festering.
that's a good word.
Yeah.
That's an excellent word.
We also have a state representative who left a message for me today that is aware of the problem, and I've got to get back to her and find out what, if anything, is going on.
Mike,
her end.
anytime, my apartment is open to you,
Sure.
okay? And
We may involve the building inspector, maybe the health inspector, and a few other things.
well,
so.
Mike, like I said, I've spoken to you in your cruiser, and,
Yep.
and my apartment's open to you. Please, any one of the board members, please. I know we can't have a meeting there.
No, well, that's why I said
I'm talking
with
about
the meeting,
open
we limit
law.
it to 2 selectmen or
But
whatever.
no, I'm willing to meet anyone. And by the way, congratulations. I'm sorry I overlooked that, and you are welcome too.
So
but
your
the-
issues are at the forefront,
They scare me.
and, well, you know, they bother us too. If we can't take care of our senior citizens and stuff like that, then
They
we
seem to
really
be
got a
one of the
problem.
ones that get kicked to the curb every now and then, and it's not fair and it isn't right.
So if you will allow us an opportunity to try and work on this, and get some answers for you, we'll do our best.
Would you allow me to meet with you or a representative of your board in the future? You have my phone number, Mike.
Right. And I've got
Dick, you have my phone number.
And I've got your 2 pages of issues that you brought up too.
That's just the short list.
Right.
Okay.
So I think we can start there with the director of South Shore Housing and maybe convince them that it's in the best interest of everybody if we address these things and do them properly and take care of these people before we have to take it to anybody else, because, I mean, this is federal money involved in this. You're talking HUD, you're talking, State Attorney General, and,
You know what I have written down in
Yeah.
my 17 articles that I wrote.
Yep.
And I'd like you all to concentrate. If they have copies, I appreciate you passing out copies.
Okay.
And pay attention to the, and I don't mean this as an order, pay attention to the last 3 articles on that sheet.
Right.
And if you've read it, you know what I mean.
So we are very disturbed on the way people are being treated and the way issues are being dealt with, and I just want you to know that from all of the board.
Well, there were times during the course of this year or so that I felt like there was no ears. And believe me, I've called Washington DC and too many times. And get rerouted to New York. They say, well, this is the area you want to talk to. And by the time I'm done, in one day, I've talked to 50 people.
Make sure you keep all those notes, please.
You will have access to them,
Okay.
and I will show you my computer, my phone logs and whatever.
Okay.
So that any one of you can look at them.
So let us try and get an initial meeting under our belt with this individual. Maybe that will resolve everything. If it doesn't, then we'll have to discuss a strategy going forward. And if we need you to come to a subsequent meeting, we will certainly reach out to you and ask you to do that.
I would look forward to it, and any help I can, any info I can give you, any
Okay.
input, because this is a serious matter,
Absolutely.
okay? And I don't want you to think that I'm ramming something down your throat, because I had to turn to someone who would listen.
Rich, this is our job. This is what we're here for.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your ears,
Thank you.
because this has been
Yep.
bothering me, and I've lost a lot of sleep over it.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll
Take
do our
care.
best.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to just give a little background on my visit today without breaking the open meeting law.
But yeah, be
But-
careful.
Yeah.
Real careful.
What I was gonna say is I met with the director, the executive director, and he was very open to coming to meet with us. And what I picked up from dealing with Rich and John and a few of the folks out back, that we weren't as knowledgeable as we should be on this matter. So this would be a good opportunity to bring ourselves up to date and at the same time address some of these problems. So he is very willing to do this. And then the second part of that was, we had a Board of Director member on that South Shore Housing Board, and that was Bob Merritt, and he went off that board about 3 years ago, and we haven't had any representation on that since. And this fellow that's the executive director indicated that they'd be receptive to it, and also Jack Hunter said he might be willing to serve if that's the direction that we might want to take. So I'll say, can we put this on for an agenda item
We should.
to
We absolutely
further
should.
discuss and invite the director and get our questions answered and
'Cause
become more
unfortunately-
knowledgeable, as well as dealing with the issue?
And could I make a suggestion before you go too much further? Because I believe one of the issues is it was in front of the court. Am I correct?
It's in litigation, correct? Yeah.
So
We're
I-
talking about the general rules and regulations and all that. That issue was specific to one person.
All I'm suggesting is maybe just run it by town council, make sure that we're not getting ourselves into hot water.
That
Just to
might
be
be
on the
a
safe
good
side.
idea, and that might,
And they might also have some suggestions on the other issues as well, because they might have dealt with similar issues in other municipalities.
sounds like a good idea.
Speak into the mic,
Richard,
Rich.
use the microphone.
I think the idea of the town council is probably an excellent idea. This is serious. And I don't want anybody to get caught and get pinched or get into trouble. Because we have a lot to deal with, and we only have a short time to deal with it.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you again. Happy New Year.
That was the reason for my proposal, that maybe we get the director down here for a conversation first, see if we can't resolve most of this.
Could we
quiet.
squeeze that in the next meeting, you
Yeah.
think? We got a lot of stuff coming up next meeting.
As long as we can get them scheduled, I don't
Yep.
see why not.
Okay.
Yeah, we really should, because we're talking about, we're saying a critical issue, and most of the residents probably don't even know what we're referring to, and so
But there's a legal time frame with one of the issues, and it's the end of February, so we need to make sure that we get that resolved.
No, I'm agreeing.
Yeah.
And Mike's aware of the issues,
I will be.
so maybe you can talk to town council tomorrow.
I will.
You can keep that, I got two of them, wait a minute. Let me give you this one, because I
Uh-oh.
got something noted on the back of that.
There's love notes on the back.
No, I don't even know what it is.
Wouldn't know that.
AAA for accident?
Triple A for
Triple A.
accident.
I don't know.
Okay, moving along, any other citizens' participation? Mr. Cottarelli.
Hello,
Good evening.
good evening. Andy Cottarelli, 19 Pope's Point Road. I'm a resident and vice chair of the Carver Finance Committee, and I would just like to make a comment, a few comments actually. I wanted to applaud Selectman Franny on his proposal to secure funding for the fire station project, and kind of change things a little bit. That's in the purview of the board, I believe. And the one thing I was worried about at town meeting, even though I was glad to see the town go ahead and move this project forward, and a potential, a few others down the road after that, I was worried that the funding into the Building Stabilization Fund could get raided, and then we'd be dealing with a lack of funds, and that was the one thing I was concerned about as well. So when I was at the Building Study Committee meeting the last week, when I heard you brought that up, I was very interested, and I was glad to hear it. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for, not just, obviously you and the board and the Building Study Committee looking to get things done without raising people's taxes. I think it's a great step in the right direction for Carver, a community that's not as affluent as some others. And I think we can try to get things done without putting the burden on the people as much as possible. And secondly, the second comment I had was I was glad to hear not only the selectmen, but some other committees as well talk about doing things and getting the politics out of getting things done in this town, getting the divides, taking the divides away. I think it's kind of, the divisions in this town have been kind of, tough the last, as long as I've been around, and it's not too long, but long enough to see it, and really hampers what can get done in the town. I think that needs to stop. So that was very good to see that tonight, and your comments, Mr. Milanowski, on that as well. So that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. Anybody else? Going once, twice, thrice. Okay. Moving on, town administrator notes.
I mentioned before setting up this budget advisory committee, also have been meeting with the town accountant and trying to determine the financial planning process the town's gone through in the past, and have had a meeting with the finance chairman on this. And as part of this committee is we're gonna look to discuss and propose some new financial forecasting mechanisms so that we can determine what our revenue is gonna be as we go forward. I met with the assessor, and she's got some numbers on new growth. We're gonna have to wait until March 1st until we get the final personal property information in from the utilities to see where that ends up, but that process is moving forward. A couple other observations that I just wanted to share with the board is that I had a department head meeting last Wednesday after the school committee meeting. I will say that you have a good group of people that, as the department heads, that are very interested in, working hard for Carver, and there's a good group of people here. And it's nice getting to know everybody and realize how people care about their individual departments, and I'll be continuing to explore that as I go along, and help with some of the issues that they brought to my attention that need to be addressed. My final comment has to do with the fire station and building the new fire station. And clearly, town meeting has authorized funding to go forward. I met with the fire chief this morning. He crammed about 10 years of information into me in about 2.5 hours through a very professionally done PowerPoint presentation. My goal is to come back to the board, not at the next meeting, but the following one, first meeting in February, with a proposal as to how to move this project forward. that I'll be working out with him and to keep the ball rolling on this. So you'll be seeing that from me in the future as well.
Great.
Other than that, it's great to be here.
All right. Selectmen notes. Any volunteers? Helen?
I don't know whether we can put this on the agenda or not, but another very hot topic in the town is the issue with the Purchase Street area and the Borrego, Rocky Meadow. And there was a planning board meeting tonight, and a few of the residents are very, very upset about the way, subsequent meetings regarding their issue with the solar arrays behind their homes have turned out. That, the communication is broken down. They weren't notified of a few meetings that have taken place with the planning board. And so I just think it would be nice if we could get this on the agenda sooner than later to get an update and to support these residents, because I think the ball has been dropped in terms of the communication with these residents. They knew nothing about these meetings, and they were told they could have looked out at the website, and that was a different reaction or answer that they, when all along they've been getting great communication when it was really a heated topic. So a lot of, I can't say a lot because we did discuss it in executive session, but I just would like to get it on the agenda so the planning board or Jack Hunter or what have you can kind of,
I'm surprised nobody was here for citizens' participation tonight to discuss it.
quite frankly, I think they were so disillusioned and upset and, have lost faith. And I think they were pretty disheartened tonight. So,
Is the planning board meeting still going on tonight?
well, that was another thing the residents were very upset about, that the meeting was held at 5:30 PM, again, when people can't be there, and in room, in the basement. And they knew nothing about it, so.
I agree with Helen. We gotta do something because we were assured that everything would go smoothly,
Right,
and apparently it hasn't.
yeah. And we were assured that the communication would remain open and that these residents would be contacted, so.
That must have been a special meeting because they usually meet the Tuesdays opposite us. So they meet the first and the third Tuesday usually. So must have been some kind of a special meeting
Well, I
regarding.
think it was probably in reaction to the zoning board had their meeting first, and then they had to have their meeting afterwards within a certain time. I'm not certain, but we really need to pull everyone together.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think it's only fair to have either the planning board or the director of
ZBA.
planning here and
Right.
ZBA
And ZBA, yeah.
before
Right.
we,
Yep,
criminalize
should be
their
all-inclusive.
behavior.
Let everybody explain their positions. We may even want town council down here,
Right, right.
Mr.
This-
Corbo, who's been involved with this.
Maybe
This-
we could put that on the next agenda.
It's not criminalizing behavior, I just need to clarify that statement. It's more that I am relaying what residents have stated, that the planning board had a meeting. I'm in no way, and that's why I am asking that we do put this on the agenda so the planning board or wherever the breakdown took place can have an opportunity to let these residents know what has transpired.
Okay.
So, and the other thing, my other issue is, there's been a few more deaths in town regarding heroin. And one of, and there's not too much we can do about a specific death. I mean, there's a lot of issues surrounding why our young kids are dying left and right at this point of heroin. However, I think we as a board need to come together and bring whoever we need to deal with the needles being found everywhere in town. I know that the police chief, and I'm gonna be meeting with him again to discuss what they're doing, and I can tell you confidently that they are doing everything they possibly can to pick up the needles as they are made aware of it. But I really think that we need to take an extra step in terms of, I don't know whether money is involved, in terms of these needles that are being found everywhere. And it's pretty scary to know that people are just walking their dogs and, finding heroin needles on the ground. So I don't know what you
They are everywhere. I can speak from personal experience.
Right.
The problem is until people notify us of the locations, there's not much we can do. Once they notify us, we can go out and retrieve them and put them in our shops disposal.
No, I agree, but that's why I'm saying I think that we need to think, you know, a different approach. Like, you know, do we need to hire people, or, you know, is there a group that we can form to, you know, go out and actively look for them and be, you know, on a specific day during the month, and, you know, then have the police come to have an organized effort to be more proactive and go into the specific areas where people do frequent, you know, like behind the Ben Ellis area, and there's just a myriad of places, you know, walking on Pond Street. So I just wanted to put it out there that I think that we should talk about it.
I think one of the things that the chief, well, one of the things that he and I discussed earlier, and I think he's gonna broach with Mr. Malinowski, is that he's gonna try and set up a series of like town hall meetings over at the library and invite the citizens to come out, discuss the issues at hand, maybe explain to them what they can do to help us, because it's a community problem. We, the police, cannot solve this by ourselves.
Right, exactly.
You know, even regardless of the manpower, you know, you can't solve this by yourself. It's gonna take everybody in the town being, you know, alert, keeping their eyes open, reporting any kind of suspicious activity, and just so we can stay on top of this. I mean, we're running from one spot to another as fast as we can.
Exactly, and that's why I'm saying the police department can only do so much, and
Right.
that's why if we can think through and maybe bring it out into a public discussion of something that we could do as a community to at least work in conjunction with the police to, you know, just a quick thought is, you know, maybe once a month, every Saturday, that, you know, we get a group together of citizens, go out to the specific areas, and then we can work in coordination with Mark Dufley to say, okay, this is where we're seeing the needles, can someone come and be there? Instead of just leaving it to,
I would suggest to all the members of the public, though, that if you do locate any needles, observe any needles, find any needles, please do not touch them. Do not want to get stuck with a dirty needle. I can tell you that firsthand, okay? It won't be a pleasant experience.
Because probably those needles have been used several times.
Well, you know, you don't know.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. So it's a very scary proposition, I can tell you. So, anything else, Helen? Mike?
Mr.
no,
Chairman,
that
this-
was it.
This is a perfect topic for part of your goals and objectives, because it's a community-wide issue, and it's one of the things that we would look as staff, that comes out of your directive, is that you want us to focus resources on this, and again, it's a perfect topic that'll come out of that facilitation meeting.
It's an excellent thought when we do the goals and objectives.
Dick?
Let me continue. I mean, it's astounding to me that we lost 2 young people within the first 2 weeks of our 2014.
An additional two.
I mean, during this 2 weeks. I mean, it's, I think this has got to be a community-wide attack. It's going to have to be some kind of a task force. It's good, because it doesn't just have law enforcement. There's education, there's family education, there's got to be some changes in attitudes and such. A fellow stopped by yesterday, a longtime administrator in the Boy Scouts, very concerned with it. I introduced him, Lenny Thatcher, to Mike, and he is really concerned, really wants to get involved. And so I've talked to him, and I've brought it to the attention of the YPAC board, but we need to be an overall focus. And I think the best thing to do is, like Mike says, we address this as an objective of our town, our goal. Has to be. We can't have this happening. And it's happening all around us. But when you've been a teacher for a long time, and you see kids that you had in school dying prematurely, I mean, it knocks you. So, and I'm sure Mike sees the same thing as a police officer.
It's, you know, and you have no idea how many kids have been brought back that were on the verge of death, but fortunately, our medical personnel have that Narcan now, and, you know, I've seen it myself. It's just amazing, but, you know, you don't want it to get to that point. So this is gonna take a community-wide effort. It takes a community to raise a child. It's gonna take a community to keep these children protected, so.
We gotta do something different, too. It's not everything we've been doing is working. Drug education in the schools, that hasn't answered the problem. Sarah's dealt with a lot of these kids way back in Story Hour.
Well, a lot of the drug education disappeared when you allowed the DARE officer
Yeah, that's right.
program to relapse. And, you know, we should have continued on with that and putting somebody in the high school also, you know, school resources officer in the high school. So those are all options. Again, we can work it into this goals and objectives. I think that would be a real appropriate environment for that, so.
I had contacted the sheriff's department to see if, you know, we could work the prisoners program to come out and pick up the needles, but unfortunately, the prisoners aren't even allowed to pick up these needles. So,
Oh, why would they? No.
yeah, well, it just goes to show how dangerous these needles are.
Well, they could serve as weapons back in the jail, that's.
Hey, I'm just,
Sorry.
Helen,
they're people
not
too.
that was probably the worst suggestion you could make to the sheriff, because they use those needles to make their own tattoos on themselves.
Oh, my goodness.
Some of them may have dropped those needles. But that's all right.
Least
I
on
bet you they were
try-
laughing
Helen, your
afterwards.
heart's in the right place. We understand
Thank
where you're
you.
coming from, okay?
I just had one more item that,
You know,
the,
fresh colleagues over here.
this is a serious thank you. The Council on Aging would like to thank all citizens of Carver who gave Christmas presents to the residents of the Radius in Plymouth. The response was overwhelming. And any of the presents that weren't distributed will be presented as birthday gifts at some time down the. There was a whole Gatra bus filled with presents that were donated that went down to the Radius. So that was the overwhelming response. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. Sarah?
Thank you. I want to concur with my three colleagues. There's really no words for losing kids.
Thank you.
Myself too, and I think also that we can't just focus on the youth. We have to focus on the families that might have a family member, a brother or sister or father or mother that's involved in drugs. The pain and suffering that they go through. They need our support as well. You know, if a parent has a child that's involved in drugs, they're not a bad parent, but sometimes society looks at them as being that way. We got to be more receptive. My own daughter spoke to me just a few days ago, and Dick said it's tough to see lose your students, and she had mentioned, and you had my daughter in school too, someone that graduated with her, someone that was a year ahead of her, and some that was a year behind her. A girl and two guys died of overdoses. And she works in the drug and alcohol treatment program, and she just says it's phenomenal, the people that are knocking on their door waiting to get into their treatment facilities. And unfortunately, they'll come in, they'll go back out, and they'll get back into it. What they need to do is change all their friends. And so we need something as a society here in Carver to revolve around that. If you're gonna put a group together, I could talk to her about coming and talking to your group. She has to be careful because of who she works for, but
Right.
she might be able to give you a lot of insight into stuff that maybe you have a different perspective on something.
Right.
The other thing is in our meeting that Helen and Dick and I, we had a long-term highway department contractor come in and say that the vendors that plowed last year, some of them got 1099s and some of them didn't. So I checked into that. And everyone that should have got a 1099 did. If you make $600 or less, you don't get a 1099. So the general public, if they're listening to this guy, the information really isn't correct. Everyone that should have got a 1099 got a 1099. and those that weren't supposed to didn't. And I have a list I can hand out to you. I know it wasn't on the agenda tonight, but I think I just mention it.
You all set, Jack?
That's it.
It's interesting that all of us had the issue of drugs forefront of our selectmen notes, as did I. Both of these individuals had passed within a span of 4 days, with 33 years of age, one male, one female. The male had an 11-year-old son. The female had 2 sons, 13 and 6. So this problem didn't just impact these people. This is a multi-generational problem. And with the female, her parents, she and her husband and her kids all lived in the same house. So, I mean, you know, this is just devastating. It devastates the whole community. So, you know, if anybody has any thoughts or ideas of how we can better deal with this, you know, please bring them to our attention. When Chief Dufley sets up his town meetings at the library, please attend, encourage others to attend, and let's see if we can't band together and stamp out this scourge as much as we possibly can. So, thank you on that. The South Shore housing was another topic. Dick, you already broached that, and we've addressed that, and I think Mike's got that ball to run with. The one thing I wanted to bring up, Mike, and this is in your bailiwick, is the budget meeting. Every year, typically, we would schedule it in February on a Saturday, and all the departments would come in and brief us on what they are looking for in their budgets in the upcoming fiscal year. You mentioned that the money on the new growth and stuff wasn't gonna, or the figures on the new growth and everything wouldn't be available until probably March 1st. Would you recommend that we have that budget meeting as close after March 1st as possible, so we know everything we're dealing with when those budgets come in front of us?
That would be ideal.
Okay, so why don't we start looking at a Saturday date somewhere right after March 1st, where we can check everybody's schedule, make sure we can get everybody together, and we can set it up and have the department heads come in, give their presentations and wish lists. And
Mike, I think we also have to set a date for the last date to turn in the warrant articles too, so we probably should put that on the next agenda.
That's always the last day in February.
for the warrant articles for the town meeting in May,
So we should put that on that we can vote at the next meeting.
that's something you want to look at, take a look at too, so.
But the selectmen have the ability of putting in a warrant article up until the warrant is finalized and sent out,
We
correct?
can open up the warrant, yeah.
I just want to make sure
Yep.
Carver bylaws allow for that.
Yep. And last but not least, I just want to encourage all of you to keep our servicemen and women in your thoughts and prayers as they serve us around the globe and protect us and our security, and allow us to live the lives that we do lead in the greatest country in the world. God bless you. God bless the town of Carver. God bless the United States of America. Thank you and good night.
Move we adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.